Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Marta Fernández de Alarcón. I am the Secretary General of the Spanish Business Council, and I want to welcome you to this webinar about the legal, regulatory, and tax requirements for doing businesses in the UAE, with one of our valuable members of the Chamber, Bakertilly. Thank you so much for the collaboration and support as a member of the Chamber. It is a pleasure to present for this webinar these amazing experts from Bakertilly today. They will decode the complexities of doing businesses in the UAE and explore the licensing's dynamic foreign investments, opportunities, and corporate models that set the stage for success. I give the floor to Mr. Sahin, Managing Partner of Bakertilly GFC Law Corporation, and to Swami, a partner and head of taxes in Bakertilly Middle East. As you may know, the Spanish Business Council is an international community, and one of our main goals is to be an international platform. And with all our members, we try to create an amazing place to share ideas, to make networking, and to find collaborations through all our members and through all our companies. So I don't want to waste time to our speakers today, and let's start.
Buenos dias, a very good morning to all of you. It's indeed a great pleasure to address you. I wish if it was a proper seminar meeting in person. Let's have whatever we could do now today. So the discussion today is about the regulatory aspects of doing business in UAE. So basically it's law, which is a very dry subject. But why law? Because law regulates life, and the problems of laws are problems of life. And all of you, all mankind, are expected to know the law. Ignorantia juris non excusat, meaning ignorance of law is not an excuse. So all of us are supposed to know the law, but the fact of the matter is even lawyers don't know the law. And it's Lord Denning, the famous judge, who once said, "Judge knows no law." The lawyers only know where to find the law. So whatever experience we have gained over a period, I've been here for 27 years, totally 32 years in this profession. So whatever little experience I have gained about law, the regulatory aspects, doing business in UAE, I will try my best to share it with you. But the time allowed is only 30 minutes, so please bear with me. To condense what we are going to discuss today, getting to know the UAE legal landscape, the key advantages of doing business in UAE, difference between entities situated in UAE mainland and free zones, economic zone versus financial free zone, licensing regime in mainland versus free zone, foreign investment opportunities in mainland and free zone, onshore corporate models as permitted in UAE mainland, onshore corporate models as permitted in DIFC free zone, procedures for setting up, and then we will have a question answer session. Let's start with a quote from His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. Our pride stems from the fact that we are a country where everyone thrives equally regardless of their differences. The equality of treatment, the equality of opportunities, and finally the equal treatment before law is what we are trying to underline here. So getting to know the UAE landscape, first we should understand that law is not a global discipline, but it's a jurisdictional discipline. We call it the laws of the land. And the land is the land mass which belongs to one country. So whatever we say about laws of UAE, that will end at the borders. New laws of other countries will start from there. So it's very important to know the geography of the country, first of all. I'm sure all of you know we have 7 emirates here, and it's a federation. So we have federal laws, Emirati laws, which is Emirates laws by Emirate decrees or local laws, and then ministerial regulations and executive regulations for every law. Federal laws are applicable to the entire UAE alike, and federal laws are supreme to other laws. The system of legislation is there. There is a long discussion. I don't want to take you to those details now. We'll have it on a separate session. Now, the judicial system of UAE. UAE has more than one Supreme Court. Most of the people, they ask me, why is it so when we are one country? So we should understand that we are 7 emirates, and the 7 emirates existed first and then the federation. So when the Federation of UAE was formed 52 years ago, the option was given to each emirate either to maintain their own judicial system or alternatively to join the federal judicial system. So out of the 7 emirates, 5 of them joined the UAE federal judicial system, while 2 of them, namely Dubai and Ras Al Khaimah, decided to have their own Supreme Courts and their own judicial system. But the Ministry of Justice is there at the federal level. So which law are we following in UAE is another question which people often ask. People assume that it is the Sharia law, which they call wrongly, because Sharia itself means law, so no need to say Sharia law. The word meaning of Sharia is the path, the pathway, like we hear the Share Hamdan, Share Sheikh Zayed. Instead of street also we use the word Sharia. So when we say Sharia in the desert, especially when the Sharia, the way is to the water, that is to the way of life itself, that refers how to live. That's exactly what law means. So that's the simple meaning of the word Sharia. But Sharia are generally applicable, the Sharia principles are generally applicable only in personal laws, and that to only Muslims, not others. UAE is a very progressive country that way. The national laws, the personal laws of the respective persons are applied even in their personal laws. Marriage, divorce, family, custody, guardianship, will, inheritance are governed by the laws of the respective people, how it's applied to them. But for Muslims, it is the Sharia. And even Sharia is not something which is printed in a book and published like that. There are 4 sources to the Sharia, which is the Quran, the holy book, Hadith, which is the teachings of the Prophet, Ijma, the collective consensus of the scholars, and Qiyas, your own consciousness, in case if you're not able to find something in the first 3. I'm not going into the details again, just touched upon that subject. So it's not Sharia which is applied in UAE for anything and everything. It's only the personal laws for Muslims where Sharia governs. The rest is all separate federal laws, and each emirate has their own laws on matters which are not covered by the federal laws. And the federal laws are largely framed based on the French civil law, not the English common law, not the Anglo-Saxon law. So the system of precedence, the judicial precedence being binding on all courts, it's not so in UAE. Doesn't mean that the judgments of Supreme Court has no value. Of course, it has a reference value, and normally the courts are guided by that, but it's not completely binding as under the Anglo-Saxon system. So the judicial precedents are considered as every judgment applies only to the facts and circumstances of that particular case. It cannot be imported ipso facto into another case. So apart from the federal courts, local courts, and the personal law courts, the criminal courts, we also have 2 financial free zones in UAE. One is Dubai International Financial Center, which was established in the year 2004, and Abu Dhabi Global Market, which was established later on. They follow their own laws, which are completely based on the English common law, contrary to the laws, the federal laws, and the emirate laws applied in the mainland. The financial free zones, DIFC and ADGM, they apply their own laws, which are framed based on the Anglo-Saxon laws, the English common law. And they have their own judicial system, both the financial free zones. All proceedings are in English. Judicial precedents are binding. Whatever I said about the UAE local courts in the mainland don't apply there. It's just the opposite. And all lawyers qualified are allowed to appear before the courts in DIFC and ADGM once they approve you. Personally, I am eligible to apply, conduct proceedings before all courts in ADGM and DIFC up to the Supreme Court. I have been given full rights of advocacy there. But in the UAE mainland, only UAE nationals who are advocates are allowed to appear, and largely all proceedings are in Arabic, though occasionally they do permit foreign languages, and above certain threshold, they do allow a foreign judge to sit in the panel so that the documents in foreign languages are interpreted correctly. So the advantages of doing business in UAE. See, it's all about ease of doing business. And in ease of doing business, UAE is always, consistently #1 in the Middle East. First of all, it's a multidisciplinary regulatory jurisdiction. As I explained, the financial free zones where it is possible to apply English common law. It is possible to conduct all proceedings in English. So that's a big advantage. And how do you submit yourself to the jurisdiction of the courts in the financial free zones or to an arbitration tribunal situated anywhere in the world? It's the contract which you sign with your counterpart. If you have a specific clause stating that the law governing this contract shall be the laws of DIFC or ADGM, that's binding. If you say that the jurisdiction is exclusive for the IFC court or ADGM court, that's also binding on the parties. Plus, you can also choose arbitration before any arbitration tribunal or ad hoc arbitration tribunals formed by yourself in the contract, and that's binding on the parties. So that is the big advantage. And UAE is a party to New York Convention 1956. So the judgments or awards passed by arbitration tribunals in UAE is enforceable almost all over the world, because there are more than 160 countries who are signatories to the New York Convention on Enforcement of Foreign Arbitration Award. Ease of establishing legal presence, I'm sure most of you are businessmen, you would have experienced it. Recently, last week, I registered a company in Dubai in probably 1 minute, I should say. It was instant registration was given. So this is the kind of ease of doing business we are talking about. There are shortcomings. There are still ways to improve. Scope for improvement is always there. We are all facing some hiccups when we want to open a bank account for the company, but it's a temporary issue. In 1 year time maximum, that will be resolved. And free zone advantages. We have 40 plus free zones in this country. Such a tiny little country. It's not a huge country that we have in UAE here, but we have 40 plus free zones in UAE, and half of them are in Dubai itself. Financial free zones, economic free zones, industrial free zones, even media free zones. And there is the alternate energy free zone, Masdar. And flower business also, there is a free zone. For humanitarian business, humanitarian activities, there is a free zone. For healthcare, there is a free zone. So we are actually spoiled by choice. Plenty of free zones here, tailor-made to cater to the requirements of the businessmen all over the world. And we should not forget, we have 200 different nationalities living in complete harmony in UAE, and all of us are treated equal. Now, foreign investment opportunities. Earlier, you may know that the company law number 8 of 1984, prescribed that every company incorporated in UAE must have a UAE national shareholder or a company which is wholly owned by UAE nationals as a shareholder to hold minimum 51% shares in the company. The national ownership requirement, and mostly people used to fake the arrangements, have somebody as a name lender, call him a sponsor, but in the eye of law, he is the majority shareholder holding 51% shares. And that was really a hotbed for all sort of disputes and litigation in UAE. Now, with the foreign direct investment promotion, the company law has been completely amended. Law number 33 of 2021, I believe, allows companies to be 100% owned by UAE nationals, and the foreign direct investment, each emirate has come out with a list. There are about 750 items which are allowed to be owned by foreigners 100% without the necessity of having a shareholder, partner, sponsor, or agent from the UAE national. So 100% is as good as a free zone. Now, tax consideration, there were no corporate tax, there were no income tax, there is still no income tax. Corporate tax is coming from June 2024, it will be applicable, but it's still at a very minimal rate of 9% on the net profits. So tax heaven is UAE. Anywhere in the world, anybody is doing business, when you talk about ease of doing business, the first consideration should be tax. And my learned friend, Mr. Nanjundasamy, is going to take you into the details, so I don't want to encroach into his territory. The booming business sector, there's always one sector or the other, or many sectors booming together in UAE. We always had it. We did face recession, slow down, but we have bounced back. Now, for example, in Abu Dhabi, ADNOC has announced projects worth billions, multi-billions of dollars. One project alone is $17 billion. So the general perception is that Abu Dhabi is not going to be the same Abu Dhabi what you're seeing now in the next 3 years. It's completely going to be changed. You'll see a new Abu Dhabi with a booming market here. And many multinational companies, multinational giants are coming to Abu Dhabi to establish their presence. And we are also doing presentations to such business delegates here. So what are the main difference between entities situated in mainland and free zones? Okay. Earlier, there was a big difference before this promotion of foreign direct investment started. There used to be this national ownership requirement in the mainland, where the free zone was allowing 100%. Now the difference is comparatively minimal, because even in the mainland, foreigners are allowed to own companies 100% and do business the way they want. Even branch offices of foreign companies, suppose you have a company abroad, you are well established, you can produce 2 years audited balance sheet, you are allowed to open a branch here, you don't even need a national agent or a sponsor. The only other activity which is remotely controlled by foreign giants are commercial agencies. For example, the car Mercedes, they don't want to come here and open a shop like Tesla did. So they appoint an agent in each emirate or completely for the entire UAE, and they monitor, control the business from the agent, conducts the business on a day-to-day matters. And the profit sharing is either there is a margin for the agent when they sell the product, or there is a commission. And it's not just selling commodities, it's rendering services, even contracting companies. You can find various products, supply and installation where commercial agencies are thriving. But commercial agency is an area which is restricted 100% to UAE nationals or companies wholly owned by UAE nationals. The free zones are, as you know, I already mentioned, the biggest attraction is that the tax exemption and the excise duty, import duty is not applicable. Suppose you are established in a free zone, you are into counter trade, transshipment, you can import products and export products there from there without paying any tax, so long as the products are not entering the UAE market, UAE mainland market, and consumed here. If it is not the case, you can always import and export without paying any excise duty from the free zone. So what are the difference between financial free zones and economic free zones? See, mainly, as I mentioned earlier, there are only two financial free zones in UAE, which are the DIFC and ADGM. Mainly, it is the federal laws completely do not apply to the financial free zones. They have their own sets of laws. DIFC has enacted laws on almost every aspect to be covered there, whereas ADGM has not reached that level. They follow English common law directly. So that's the major difference, and they have their own judicial system. They have their own courts, and they function according to their own law. Whereas other economic free zones, there are laws which are applicable in the economic free zones, which are not in violation of the federal laws, but largely the federal laws of UAE are applicable. And when I say non-applicability of the federal laws, I must clarify that anything criminal law, the federal law is applied in all places within the territorial limits of UAE alike. Whether it be economic free zone or financial free zone, it doesn't make any difference. Criminal law is the same. The punishments will be the same. And the licensing regime in mainland and free zone. I'm sure all of you know this. It's not a very important topic to be covered in this discussion, but generally I have to touch upon this as well. See, first and foremost, what we should understand is that the governing law in the mainland, if you want to establish a company, is the law number 33 of 2021 on commercial companies. This is the minimum that we all should know. And the licensing authority in each emirate is a Department of Economic Development. So as you can see, each emirate has a Department of Economic Development. When you are licensed to do business in a particular emirate, you're only licensed to practice your activity in that particular emirate, not in other emirates. For example, if your license is issued by the Dubai Emirate, you're not supposed to do any business in Sharjah or Abu Dhabi. I hope that's clear. And the name which you have got approved in the trade license for your business, that's also protected only in that particular emirate. Recently, they have started checking if the same name is used by some other company in another emirate under a federal law. But that's a recent development, and still 100% protection is not afforded. That's why it's important, no matter your name is registered as yours under the trade license issued by the Department of Economic Development, you should also register your trademark, which includes probably your trade name itself, and that protection is throughout the territory of UAE. In all the 7 emirates, you get protection for the intellectual property rights. That comes under the federal law. Otherwise, the trade license is issued by the concerned emirate, and the protection, whatever you get under the trade license, is only in that particular emirate. If you start a business and you thrive in Dubai under a particular name, it doesn't stop another company to start the same business with the same name in a different emirate, which will definitely hurt you. If they be very successful, they'll be eating to your clientele. If they are a disaster, they will harm your reputation. So either way is not something which can be tolerated. So you have to protect your rights. You have to protect your name, mark under the intellectual property rights law, which is the trademark which you have to protect it. And free zones, every free zone mostly have a free zone authority, except few who are governed by other departments. So the free zone authority comes with rules and regulations for registration of free zone entities in the respective free zone. So the advantages is no foreign exchange controls according to free zone companies, no restricted on capital repatriation, no currency restriction, no import or export duties. So foreign investment opportunities in mainland versus free zone. So after the foreign direct investment promotion, the new company law number 33 of 2021, as I mentioned earlier, the difference is reduced. So foreign ownership is possible, repatriation of capital is possible in free zones and mainland alike on the permitted activities which comes under the positive list for foreign direct investment in the respective emirate. So each emirate has published a list. Dubai, Abu Dhabi, other emirates, they have permitted certain activities on the FDI. It's not the same, but more or less the principles which they follow are the same. So restricted activities, you can see Cabinet Resolution number 55 of 2021. It sets out the activities which grants third-party regulatory bodies the authority to determine the percentage of foreign ownership, either in share capital, board membership, or additional controls as they deem appropriate. The list of activities mainly are which involves a strategic impact, like security and defense activities, activities of military use, banks, exchange houses, finance companies, and insurance companies, and printing currency, telecom industry. These are largely the areas which are considered as strategic impact, industries with a strategic impact, and they don't come under the permitted activities for foreign direct investment. I think I briefly touched upon some of these points earlier, so I'll take you very quickly through this. These are corporate models as permitted in UAE mainland. So it's not just the most common type of company you see here is a limited liability company, but that's not the only one. That's the most suitable one, of course, for any company or individual to come here, establish a business. If you ask me which is the most suitable model, it's a limited liability company. It's equivalent to the Société Anonyme in France, the private limited company in England and elsewhere. So the advantage of opening a limited liability company is that you have a capital. The capital can be any amount. There is no restriction on that. And there can be minimum 2, maximum 50 partners. Now, under the new company law, sole proprietorship LLC is also permitted. Even a single owner company is also possible. Either a company or an individual can own 100% shares of a limited liability company, which is a new development. Now, under this, The capital is determined and is mentioned in the memorandum of association of the company. The liability of the shareholders is restricted to the amount they are contributing to the capital of the company. Nothing beyond that. The company's capital is only 300,000. The company has a liability of 10 million dirhams. The shareholders are not personally responsible. This is the advantage of opening a limited liability company, which assures you the corporate protection. At the same time, you should understand there is a ministerial regulation now which holds the general manager of the company responsible if the company is not able to satisfy a judgment within 45 days. This is, to be honest, against the corporate protection, against the principles of corporate protection, but at the same time, why the legislation, why the ministry has done this? It's mainly because suppose a company is functioning and it's reaching a position where the losses have exceeded 25% of the capital, 50% of the capital, or the capital is completely wiped out, is unable to pay the debt, the general manager has a duty to report that matter to the shareholders and to the court as well, and take the company to bankruptcy proceedings. So why the company is unable to satisfy a debt even after 45 days once the judgment is issued by the court? Because the general manager has not taken the right steps at the right time. Otherwise, the company should have been taken to bankruptcy. Then none of the shareholders, nor the directors, nor the general manager would have been liable. So that's the only logic I could imagine of why the ministry has come out with a regulation like this. And when you establish a foreign branch, there is no capital requirement. Earlier, we used to show the capital is dirhams 250,000, but now even that is not required. Capital is no requirement there. But a 50,000 dirham bank guarantee has to be produced in favor of the Ministry of Economy, and an undertaking should be given by the parent company stating that the mother company sitting abroad is responsible for all the financial liabilities of the branch in UAE. So in short, a branch is never considered as a separate entity. It's like me and my arm. This is not separate. If somebody burns my arm, I will feel the pain. So that's the relationship between the mother company and the branch. It's not like a separate, distinct legal entity which can be formed through a limited liability company. So what is the preference? The preference is always to start a limited liability company. The branch was an option earlier when there was a national ownership requirement for the foreign company to 100% own its business by appointing a service agent who does not have any stake in the company, neither in the capital nor in the profits, and he is paid a fixed amount per year or a percentage of turnover or profit as agreed between the parties. Now, if you ask me, I wouldn't recommend opening a branch. I would say you better open a limited liability company. You can open it as a sole proprietorship LLC or have a minor partner working for it. And private joint stock company is an extension of the private limited company. The main difference is that minimum capital is 5 million. There are certain advantages when you want to go public, when you want to go make it a public joint stock company and issue your shares for public subscription. Plus, even in the commercial agency sector, private joint stock companies comes with an exception. You can have a foreign shareholder in a private joint stock company. Now, other types of companies we have are partnerships. Partnership is a general partnership. The partners will be jointly and severally responsible. It could be 2 or more physical partners and jointly and severally responsible for all obligations of the partnership business. There is no limited liability at all there. Limited partnership companies where there could be general partner and limited partners. General partners are responsible for all the liabilities of the company jointly and severally. But the limited partners will be liable only to the extent of the capital they have contributed, the share they have contributed towards the capital. And limited liability company, I believe I already touched upon that. That's the most prominent, most common type of company in UAE and anywhere in the world for that matter. Public joint stock company, it's more or less same to the private joint stock company. The only difference is that there should be minimum 5 founder partners required. Minimum capital is 30 million. And once you're established and you achieve certain thresholds with the permission of the ministry and the concerned competent authorities, including the stock exchanges here, you can offer your shares to the general public. I'm coming to the end. So the procedure for setting up legal presence in UAE mainland, the free zones are much more simple compared to the mainland. They are actually more customer friendly and they want to attract more people to establish businesses in their respective free zones. So the procedure is simple and they help you with the procedure. You don't need any lawyers or accountants to assist you with incorporation of a company in a free zone. It's so straightforward, easy to do. Only thing is when you want to choose which free zone, under which license you should go, and if there is anything special for your requirements, then you may need professional advice. Otherwise, it's pretty simple and straightforward. So in the mainland, like any other place, the first and foremost, you should decide what is your business activity. What exactly do you want to achieve? See, in deciding the business activity, I would say that you should have a vision and a mission together. The mission is to establish something smaller or large as may be required immediately, but the vision is where you want to reach after 10 years, 20 years, maybe even after 50 years, and the structure that you have decided to follow is suitable for that. It has the strong foundation on which you can build for the future. And the legal form of the company to be decided. Here again, you may need professional advice, whether it's limited liability company, the most suitable one, or a professional license, 100% owned by the person will do, or you need to go for the private joint stock company or a general partnership, limited partnership. Should you go for a public joint stock company? These are matters to be discussed and decided. Most common one, most prominent one, most suitable one is always a limited liability company. Trade name registration, I mentioned about it. It's just payment of 1,000 dirhams or 2,000 dirhams, depending on the emirate. And you reserve a trade name. That's the first thing you do. Not necessary that I have decided to use a particular name for my company and that's immediately available. When maybe it's already taken by somebody else for the same activity and it's not available for me. So what I should do here, I should submit my choice, at least 4 or 5 names in the order of priority, and whichever is available, it will be given to me. Once the trade name is allotted to me, there are certain number of days, 30 days to 60 days, ranging between that, depending on the emirate which you choose. And within that, you can submit your application for registration of your company with all the supporting documents. Even if you miss the date, there is a payment or fee for extension, you can still do it. So registration and license application has to be submitted. Now almost all the emirates, they are following online applications. So it's pretty standard, user-friendly, anybody can do it. Professional help is sought only when there are specific requirements. Otherwise, it's very easy for anyone to register a company now. But at most care should be taken in drafting your memorandum of association. Although the concerned DED in each emirate will tell you there is a standard form, you can follow this. But one suit, one size will not fit for all. It depends on whether you are 1 shareholder, 2 shareholders, 5 shareholders, 20 shareholders, whether you have a board of directors, whether every power is given to one general manager, you want to give restricted powers. All these are considerations which the investors have. And according to your needs, the memorandum of association can be tailor-made. We can keep the larger structure as given and instructed by the concerned DED, but the contents can be different. And this is the company. It's like if you file a case, finally 1 year, 2 years, you drag it in the court, and there comes a judgment in favor of one of the partners. It's like saying the surgery operation was successful, but the patient died. The whole purpose of the fight was for the company, and the company is no more. Because the partners were fighting with each other, there was no one to take care of the company. Even if one of the partners applied to the court for appointment of an administrator or a receiver, imagine a lawyer like me being appointed as a receiver for a contracting company. What will I do with that? I will kill it. I have no idea how to run a contracting company, and I have no interest. So receiver or administrator is the last thing any partner should opt for. Partnership disputes are to be negotiated and settled. And it's always negotiated and settled at the end. Earlier, the better is my sincere legal opinion here, because after the fight also, you're going to achieve the same thing. Better achieve it without a fight, because in the legal fight, the only beneficiary will be the lawyer, nobody else. The parties are all losers. And that's why we tell all our clients, a bad settlement is better than a good case. Now the review process, once your application is submitted, all the required documents are submitted, everything in order, it takes maximum 5 to 10 days. And the government, if at all it requires additional approvals, for example, suppose you're starting an educational institution, it goes to the Ministry of Education. If it's a hospital, it goes to the Ministry of Health. Anything to do with law, it goes to the Ministry of Justice. The Finance, Ministry of Finance. Unless it goes to another department like this, within 5 to 10 days, lastly, you will have all your approvals in place, your company will be running. There are companies which can be started in one day also, as I mentioned in the beginning. So normally the approvals are delayed only when it requires approvals of other ministries other than the Department of Economic Development. And when you want to do business in Abu Dhabi, if you want to do business with ADNOC, there is a special procedure for getting approval from ADNOC. Earlier it was the Supreme Petroleum Council, which shows one activity in your trade license, onshore and offshore oil and gas field services. This is the big time consuming affair. So what I normally advise my clients is, you get your license, if it's a general contracting, supply installation, get your license for that. And as soon as you get your license, you have your place for doing your business. You can start hiring your staff. You can have your website, email, all other things required for running a business properly, plus open your bank account. So you're doing all the groundwork. Simultaneously, from day one, once you get the license, apply for amendment of the license, which let it take 1 month or 2 months for getting this onshore and offshore oil and gas field services, the trade license. It doesn't hurt you. Anyway, you are required to spend this time. So spend it simultaneously. Simultaneously is the answer, always to avoid delays. Parallelly proceed. Okay. Now, approval and payment. Once it is approved, there is a fee to be paid, and you can collect the license from the concerned department. And contractor classification is an area which may require a lot of explanation. I think the time allowed to me doesn't permit. I've already exceeded, I believe. Sorry for that.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you, Shaheen. I think it's quite a bit of overview in terms of how the tax landscape, also along with the legal landscape in the UAE. It's as Shaheen mentioned, it's the taxes. It's although the corporate taxes are new, it's from 2023. There have been taxes. It's in UAE, specifically for the extractive businesses. It's the oil and gas. It's and also some of the branches of the foreign companies have been subjected to tax from 1965. There have been specific emirate degrees that are there, tax decrees that are there, that taxes the extractive businesses as such. Apart from that, it's considering the inclusive framework and considering the GCC VAT framework that has been signed by the GCC countries. It's we see the excise tax that was introduced in 2017, which was followed by the value-added taxes introduction in 2018. And then considering the OECD inclusive framework, there was economic substance reporting. Apart from this, it's as part of the inclusive framework, there has been tax information exchange agreements as well, which have been implemented, whether it's CSR, FATCA. So those are the aspects that which are part of the MLI and the inclusive framework, which has already been implemented. Now in 2023, we see the corporate tax introduced. Corporate tax is effective June 1, 2023 for any financial year starting on or after June 1, 2023. In terms of the rate of tax, it's we have up to 375,000 of the taxable income. It is 0%. Beyond 375,000 is 375,000 is 9% taxes. For the free zone, we talked about, Shaheen talked about the mainland and the free zone company. For eligible free zone persons or the free zone companies, it can still be 0% taxes on the qualifying income. For the others which do not qualify as a free zone entity for the corporate tax, UAE corporate tax purposes, 9% taxes would apply. For the multinational companies which have revenues in excess of euro 750 million or 3.15 billion, there is a global minimum tax that will be applicable, which is the 15% as part of Pillar 2. The tax framework as such, it's a corporate tax framework as such to start with, doesn't have advanced tax payments. Withholding taxes are at 0%. VAT, the rate of VAT is 5%. Just a quick comparison in terms of the region as such, it's UAE continues to be, it's not just from the benefits of the businesses which Shaheen mentioned in terms of economic stability, ease of doing business and all that. Apart from that, if you look at the rate of tax itself, it's very competitive rate of tax, 9%, a single digit tax rate. It's corporate tax rate, which you would not see within the GCC. It's all others are, it's 10% or above. Of course, Bahrain, part of the inclusive framework, tax should be corporate taxes should be introduced sometime soon. In terms of how does the free zone work, taxation work, there are two layers. It's one in terms of free zone being classified as a qualifying free zone from the corporate tax purposes. Once that get qualified as a free zone, then it's the income that gets earned by, or the income that is generated by this free zone entity, or the revenue that is earned by the free zone entity, that will have to be a qualifying revenue. If that is satisfied, then it's the taxation could be at 0%. How to qualify as a free zone entity for the corporate tax purposes? The first thing is it's having adequate substance. Then it's deriving the qualifying income. Not elected, you have an option. Even though you are a free zone entity, you can give up that option of 0% taxes. That you should not have elected. And then if there are intercompany transactions or related party transactions, those transactions will have to be at arm's length. There are a couple of additional conditions that's as part of the ministerial decision as such, which is the revenues, non-qualifying revenue. If you are earning non-qualifying revenues as well, that should not exceed the de minimis or the 5, which is the 5% of the total revenue, or 5 million. It should not be exceeding these limits, and you should prepare the financial statements to avail to qualify as a free zone person. When you are earning qualifying income, which is in excess of 95% of your total revenue, then you will have the eligibility to be taxed at 0%. What is qualifying income? It's for an entity which is a qualifying free zone. Any activities which are not excluded activities will be income that is generated from those activities will be qualifying income. Any income which is derived from a non-free zone person, it's as long as it is related to the qualifying activities, that can be qualifying income. Income to the extent of qualifying intellectual property, it's an exploitation of the intellectual property, can be qualifying income. Any other income which does not exceed the de minimis threshold. So these are the income which can be part of the qualifying income. What are the qualifying activities? It's if we have to largely look at what are the ones which are part of the goods or the materials that that are either manufactured, processed, distributed in or from a designated zone, and trading of qualifying commodities as well. These are part of the goods. In case of a related party transaction, the income that is generated through related party transactions, it includes the headquarters of provision of headquarters services, treasury services, and financing services. In terms of regulated activities, it's where the free zones, it's where there's some of the regulated activities, be it in terms of reinsurance, fund management, or wealth management services. In case of other activities, it's other than this, it could be holding of shares in other securities for the investment purposes, ownership and management or management operation of ships, financing and leasing of aircraft, logistics services. So these are the qualifying activities. Any income earned generated from carrying out these activities in a free zone company, subject to fulfillment of the other substance conditions, or the transfer pricing arm's length principles as such, it can be as 0% eligible for 0% taxes as such. What are the excluded activities? Any activities that are undertaken with the natural persons other than subject to ownership of ships, it's financing of aircraft, fund management services, and wealth management services. Other than this, any activity that are undertaken it's with the natural person, that activity will not be eligible as a qualifying activity. Then banking activity, it's insurance activity, finance and leasing activity, which are all subject to regulatory oversight, except for the exception that was provided in terms of the reinsurance services, will all be excluded activity. These activities will not be eligible for 0% taxes. Ownership and exploitation of immovable property, which is not a commercial property, which is located in a free zone, or a commercial property which is located in a free zone, but then it's exploited through other than free zone person. So those are the excluded activities. Any activity related to either qualifying activity or the excluding activity, which are ancillary to these activities, will also get covered as the respective qualifying or excluded activities. What happens to the natural persons? The taxes, UAE corporate tax, it's the tax on the business. It's not the tax on the individuals, or it's not the income tax as such, as we understand. On the natural persons, what is subject to what is subject to tax in case of a natural person is only the business or the business activity income. Income from wages, personal investment, or real estate investment income will not be subject to tax. In addition, in case of an individual or a natural person, the business or the business activity will have to generate revenue in excess of 81 billion to be subject to corporate taxes. It's the revenue, it's not the profit as such. So only when the revenue exceeds 1 million, the business or the business activity may be subject to corporate taxes. Example, it's in case Mr. Adam, he can be either a resident, that is, it's who is residing in UAE as per the tax laws 183 days, or as per the treaty that it is there between UAE and Spain. It's or he may be residing in Spain but having a property in the UAE. Those cases, it's any income that is generated from this property. It could be rental income, or in case of it's sale of this property, a capital gain that arises by sale of this property, it will not be subject to corporate tax. However, instead of Mr. Adam holding the property in his name, if there is a company that is set up and that company holds this property, then the income of that company, whatever, be it in terms of the rental or in terms of the capital gains, that will be subject to tax. Now that the taxes are being introduced, how does the businesses prepare for the corporate taxes in UAE? first and the foremost thing that needs to be done by any business. Of course, Spanish businesses may be subject to tax in Spain. They would know that it's how the taxes would work largely. Here, it's based on the UAE tax laws. How does it impact their business, UAE business, whether it's as a permanent establishment that they're carrying on the business, or as a company or LLC or a free zone entity? How does it impact? Whether if it's in a free zone, whether the substance part is taken care. How do I get into the tax year from the financial statements perspective? What will be my opening balances that I take to the tax year? How do I arrive at that? It's what are the transition provisions that may be applicable? What happens to the place of effective management of the entities, not necessarily the UAE entity, but also when you are operating within the region, what happens to the effective management? Am I creating effective management of the other companies within the region in UAE? Whether I am creating any permanent establishment in any other places? What happens to the intercompany pricing, whether I have transfer pricing policy and the related documentation in place? Are there any tax treaty benefit, any restructuring that I need to take care? And then the implementation as such, how do I go about implementing the tax laws? Just a quick disclaimer, it's considering the tax laws, all this has been whatever tax law discussions that we are having now, it's more a general, it's for the general information and educational purposes. You will have to obtain specific professional advice before taking or not taking any action. And also the Ministry of Finance specifically has mentioned on their website, and then they draw attention to one of the decree laws, which says that it's all the publications you will have to refer to Ministry of Finance and DFTA, which are the authority for issuing those publications related to the tax laws. This it's neither Spanish Business Council nor Bakertilly will be responsible for any action or inaction by your end based on this discussion. This is only for a general information and knowledge sharing purposes. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much for all the information. It was really clear and really interesting. Now we can have some questions. Let's see. Through the chat, you can write it down. I have received some messages through my mobile, and they are asking for the presentation. So I think that we can share afterwards for all the people who is interested. We can share. I'm a Spanish resident, but also set up my company here in Dubai and a resident. I have properties in Spain rented. Do I have to pay tax on them? Thanks.
Easy for you.
Yeah, sure. So property in Spain, it's which will be subject to the taxes in Spain. It's as I said, in terms of the rental property as such, rental income as such, it will not be subject to taxes in the UAE. Again, the tax treaty part would come in. It's as you said, you are a resident here in UAE. You may have to look at whether there are any tax treaty benefits that may be available, because the taxes, you would have paid taxes on the rentals in Spain.
Thank you. Again, another more question is, thank you very much. For existing businesses that has public contracts, would corporate tax be considered as change in law under UAE law?
I think I can try to answer that question. I'm on the confidence that Mr. Sami is there to help me if I don't complete it properly.
Yeah, please.
So the question comes because change in law could be considered as a post major event for the purpose of implementing a contract. So normally there is always a force majeure clause in the last contract, and which says that any government action, any act of God, which are beyond the control of the parties, that will be considered as an event which is not in the control of the parties, and there should be some remedies for that. So what happened is a large contract is signed by a company with one of the government entities here, and then there is a change in law by bringing in the corporate tax. So what happens is it affects the profitability of the company in executing that project. But what we should understand here is that it only affects the profitability of the company, not the ability of the company to execute the project itself. Suppose the tax was imposed on the turnover, definitely that creates a problem. Here, what is happening is it eats from your profit. You did not account for it while costing for this, while doing your costing for this particular project. This is exactly what I understand the implications of that question. And this is a completely new phenomenon in UAE, and it is yet to be tested. So there is nothing stated specifically in the law that this would be considered as a change in law. So I cannot definitely say that this would be considered as a change in law and there will be a remedy available for that. And it's too early for a judicial precedent to happen in this particular matter. Unless and until someone approaches the court, a judgment comes from the Supreme Court, I cannot give you a judicial interpretation as well. So I'm also at the same level where you are. It's all left to our assumptions and imaginations. But I would reasonably assume that there has to be an effective correspondence with the customer, the client, and it should be raised as a point to claim that some benefit should be given, that the pain should be shared because this is a change in law and a force majeure event, which is completely beyond contemplation, completely beyond my control when I did the costing for this project and agreed to execute this project at a particular price. So Swami, if you wish to add something or clarify it more.
The tax, it's as you as Shaheen mentioned very clearly, whether it's a force majeure event or otherwise, it definitely has an impact in terms of the costing that you would have looked at for a project. You may definitely talk to the have a word with your contracting party and then see that it's whether this can be treated as such, and then it's whether the pricing as such you can renegotiate.
And if you don't find a proper resolution amicably, we are here to help you.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
And including reviewing what is deductible or what is allowable, and then it's optimizing to a certain extent tax as such.
Okay. Anna Conde from ELMTC says that there are no really benefits in the double taxation treaty as it applies only for Emiratis. It is not a question, it is only an affirmation. And she's saying also that to reply the Spanish resident in the UAE that owns properties in Spain, if the person is not considered a tax resident in Spain, which is basically the case if he does not live in Spain in a fiscal year for more than 183 days, unless the specific cases, but owns a property in Spain, he will contribute to a special tax for non-residents as follows. If the house is not rented to a third party, either it is empty or occupied, but its family, and as in our case, the person shall pay a tax amount that is based on an assumption of its value made by the tax authority, imputación de rentas inmobiliarias, which is in Spain. If he rents the house to a third party, he will pay a tax equivalent to 24% of the rent. This is what Ana Conde says about this, regarding this question. And I'm not sure if you want to add something, Sami and
Yeah, it's yeah, sure. It's yes, it's in terms of the residency, it's the citizens who will be eligible for the treaty benefit as such. The taxes that are paid in Spain, it's on the property. Generally, what happens is that it's in terms of the property, the situs of the property, and generally the taxing rights are given to where the property is situated. When the property is situated in Spain, it is the tax laws of Spain that would be applicable. However, there would not be any additional taxes here in UAE.
Okay, another question is, in case you have a crystal ball, could you please share your views on possible implementation of personal income tax in the UAE?
Left to guess what?
Yeah, it's unfortunately, but we don't have a crystal ball as such. But then it's taking a shot at what is the reason for introduction of the tax in the region as such. The introduction of taxes here, it's from the businesses, is because of the inclusive framework, OECD inclusive framework, which it's UAE is also a member along with other 140 countries. So it's totally 141 countries who have signed the agreement to say that we will have some form of tax systems for the businesses so that there is no base erosion of the income for the taxes as such. So now the businesses have been covered. It's over. OECD is working on the other project to ensure that what should be the minimum taxation, which is the global minimum tax of 15% or the pillar 2 aspects, pillar 1 and pillar 2. This may take some more time. Post that, when there is a global consensus on the personal taxes as well, that could be one situation. Or otherwise, if when the federal government or the Emirates together they decide that okay, it's time to introduce the personal taxes as well. That could be the other situation. So if you look at the introduction of business tax, it's been the global collaboration. That's the reason. So we'll have to wait and see whether it will be a voluntary move by UAE or it's a global pressure that would lead to introduction of taxes on personal income as such.
Okay, thank you. For my business in the UAE, can I include my expenses, travels, hotels, meals? Also for my business, I travel a lot. Are those expenses can be included to be taken from profit? Thanks.
These are some expenses which are wholly and exclusively incurred for the purposes of carrying on the business are deductible. However, there are certain exceptions. There is something called the entertainment expenses, which categorizes even the travel and the food expenses are classified as part of the entertainment expenses. These are generally because the reason why it's classified as entertainment expenses is that there is a possibility of personal element as well along with the business element. So instead of asking for a detailed documentation in terms of what are the purposes, what did you do in that travel, all those, the government says that okay, 50% is something that will be allowable as deductible expense. Whatever the expenses that you incur, 50% will not be allowed as a tax deductible expense. If 100 is incurred as travel expense, only 50 will be allowed as deductible expense. Other 50 you will have to disallow to arrive at the taxable income.
Thank you. And the last question is how to get a tax residency certificate in UAE to use in Spain?
Yeah, for the tax residency certificate, you will have to apply to obtain the tax residency certificate. You will have to provide the incorporation certificate of the company along with the other documents. It could be financials and other MOA, AOA, all those aspects, and then it's a request for a tax residency. So post that, the FTA, if they have any queries, they will ask for queries or additional documentation. After that, once they are satisfied, they will issue the tax residency certificate.
For individuals, not corporate. He's saying, sorry, the how to get a tax residency certificate for individuals, not corporate.
Both you can.
Is the same procedure for the individuals? It's, however, again, the eligibility aspect is something that needs to be looked at. Whether you are eligible to obtain a tax residency certificate as such.
Probably they wanted to know what is the eligibility criteria for the individual to have that tax residency.
Yeah, for the individuals, it's you will have to be UAE citizen. That's the treaty is applicable for the UAE citizens. It's some of the treaties that are entered with the other governments. It's UAE. The criteria when it's an individual who will be eligible. It's in some cases it will list as the citizens. So UAE and Spain treaty, it says so who will be considered as residents. It's the UAE citizens who will be considered as the tax residents as such, or who would be able to claim the treaty benefit, apart from the other requirements that are there in terms of the residency.
Okay, thank you. I think that maybe you can include in the presentation this kind of information, as we are going to share it with the people who is interested in receive it. So I think it would be better, if we have all this information in the presentation. And last question is someone says, PwC in of their forums saying that the tax is on worldwide income.
Again, it's for residents, the taxability will be based on the worldwide income.
He's asking for all entities incorporated in the UAE, including free zones, of course. So the tax is on worldwide income for all entities incorporated in the UAE, including free zones, of course.
Yes.
So it means for all my income, I have to pay tax.
Not his personal income, the company's income. See, the company crosses certain threshold, then there is a corporate tax on the net profit. So whatever is considered as company's income in deriving the net profits of the company, that net profits is taxable at 9% corporate tax, is my understanding. So Swami can correct me if I'm wrong.
That is correct. It's in terms of a company having income, worldwide income, whether as exports or has a permanent establishment elsewhere, that income will be taxable here in the UAE. Not individual income, unless the business is carried out anyway. That becomes a little complicated if we need to understand, as I said, it's this comments, it could be considered, you can consider it as general comment. Your specific situation, unless we understand the complete fact, trying to address your specific situation may not be the right forum.
Okay, thank you. I think we are done with the questions. Okay. Okay, so thank you so much for this webinar, and hope to collaborate soon together. And thank you for all the attendees who has joined us. Thank you for your time. We can
Thank you
clap.
for the opportunity to be part of this, to do our presentation. Thank you very much, dear audience. It's so unfortunate that we could not meet you in person. Very soon we will have an opportunity for that.
Thank you very much. You can reach out to us if it's when you have specific questions. It's I could not answer Dane your question unless it's I know Dale, it's unless I know what the specific circumstances are. It's more than happy to have a quick call with you, you can reach me. Martha may be able to share the contact details. So please feel free to reach out to me. Thanks for the patient listening and all the questions.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Martha.
Bye.